the constant shore. A symbol is a promise. It's a whisper in the dark, a hand on your shoulder when you're alone. It's meant to be simple. A star, some stripes, a circle, something you can draw on the dirt with a stick, something a kid can paint on a piece of scrap wood. It's supposed to say, you're not alone. We're here. We believe in the same thing. But what happens when the promise keeper gets lost? What happens when the man holding the symbol starts to forget what the promise even was? The weight of this thing, it isn't the vibranium. It's the history. All the hands that have touched it, all the eyes that have looked to it for hope, and mine, just mine. My name is Steve Rogers. I suppose most people know the other one, the one they put on the posters. But I was Steve first, just a skinny kid from Brooklyn who didn't like bullies. It's funny how a life can pivot on a single, simple truth. I don't like bullies. That's it. That's the secret origin. Not a lightning strike or a spider bite. Just a bone-deep inability to look away when someone stronger is pushing someone weaker. Everything else. The serum, the shield, the uniform, that's all just noise. It's the stuff that happened after I made the choice. The choice to stand up. I just never realized I'd have to keep standing for so long, and that I'd end up standing alone. They tell you that time is a river, flowing in one direction. It's a comforting thought, orderly, predictable. But my river hit a dam of ice, and when it finally broke through, the landscape was gone. The trees, the shoreline, the sky, all of it was alien. People talk about culture shock. The music, the technology, the clothes. That's the easy part. You can learn to use a smartphone. You can get used to the strange sound of the cars. The hard part is the silence. The silence where familiar voices used to be. I walk through a city of ghosts. I see a newsstand and I expect to see a headline about the front. I see a young couple laughing on a park bench, and for a split second my heart aches because I see Peggy. Her smile, the way she'd look at me, like she wasn't looking at a symbol, but at the clumsy kid from Brooklyn who was still hiding inside. I feel her absence like a missing limb. A phantom pain that flares up when the air gets cold or a certain song plays on the radio. And Bucky. God, Bucky. He wasn't just my friend. He was my memory. He was my whole life before all of this. He was the guy who knew I was allergic to penicillin. The guy who knew I used to put newspaper in my shoes to cover the holes. He was my north. And when I lost him on that train, I lost my compass. The world spun, and I just kept fighting, because it was the only thing I knew how to do. Charge forward, follow the objective, but without a compass, you're just running in the dark. I woke up in a world that had memorialized my ghost. They'd built museums to me. They'd written books about a man they never knew, a man who became a legend because he was conveniently frozen in time, a perfect hero, sealed in ice. But they didn't have to wake up every morning and see that hero's face in the mirror, knowing the man behind it was just tired. Tired of fighting wars where the front lines are invisible and the enemy wears a friendly face. In the 40s, the fight was simple. The Nazis were evil. What they were doing was a stain on humanity. You picked up a gun, you stood next to the man beside you, and you pushed back the darkness. You knew who to trust. You trusted the guy sharing your foxhole. You trusted the patch on your sleeve. Now the darkness wears a suit and a tie. It sits in boardrooms and congressional hearings. It calls itself security. It calls itself progress. It trades freedom for safety, a piece at a time, until you're living in a comfortable cage and you've forgotten what the sky looks like. They asked me to lead, to be the moral compass for a new generation of heroes. But how can you be a compass when you can't find north? How can you hold the shield to protect people from a threat they can't even see, a threat they might even welcome? I used to believe in America. Not the government, not the borders, not the flag. I believed in the idea. The dream, that beautiful, impossible dream that a bunch of flawed, brilliant, hopeful people wrote down on a piece of parchment. The idea that everyone gets a voice, that power should be afraid of the people, not the other way around. That right and wrong are not determined by the powerful, but by a truth that's self-evident. I fought for that idea. I walked into the ice for that idea. But when I woke up, I saw the cracks in the foundation. I saw the fear. I saw people so afraid of the world outside their door that they were willing to build walls not just on the borders but in their hearts. They were willing to point a weapon at their neighbor just in case. I saw SHIELD, the organization built to protect the world, secretly building weapons to control it. Project Insight. 3 helicarriers that could execute 1 million people before they even committed a crime. Zola called it order. The price of freedom. And I stood there, listening to a Nazi's algorithm explain to me why liberty was obsolete, and I realized the war never ended. It just went underground. It changed its uniform. The Red Skull wanted to conquer the world with force. He was a monster, and we stopped him. But the monsters of this century, they don't wear swastikas. They wear friendly smiles. They promise you safety. They promise you order. They use your own fear against you. And they're so much harder to fight. How do you punch a shadow? How do you reason with an algorithm? I fought Tony, a man I considered a friend. We fought over oversight, over control. He believed that power needed to be checked, to be leashed. And he wasn't entirely wrong. But the question is, who holds the leash? A committee? A government? What happens when that committee is compromised? What happens when the people holding the leash have their own agenda? I saw it happen. I saw good people make terrible choices because they were afraid, because they thought it was the only way. And I learned the hardest lesson of all. Patriotism is a dangerous thing when it becomes blind loyalty. My loyalty isn't to a flag. It can't be. My loyalty has to be to the dream. And when the country veers away from that dream, you don't veer with it. You stand your ground. You become the constant shore against the changing tide. You plant your feet. You look the whole world in the eye and you say no. You move. But standing your ground is a lonely business. It costs you. It costs you friends. It costs you your home. It makes you an outcast. And there are nights, long nights, when the silence is deafening and I wonder if I made the right choice. If one man, even with a shield, can really make a difference against the tide. Then I remember the snow. It was the winter of '44, the Ardennes. The cold was a physical thing, a creature that gnawed at your bones. We were pinned down, a small company, running low on everything. Food, ammo, hope. There was a farmhouse nearby that had been shelled. We swept it for hostiles, found nothing. But in the cellar, huddled under a pile of potato sacks, was a family. A mother, a father, 2 little kids. They were French. They didn't speak any English. We didn't speak much French. They looked at us with pure terror in their eyes. We were soldiers, men with guns. To them we were no different from the ones who had shelled their home. They were just waiting for the end. I remember kneeling down. I took off my helmet. One of the men, a private from Ohio named Miller, he had a bar of chocolate he'd been saving, his last one. He walked over, broke it in half, and held it out to the little girl. She just stared at it. Her father whispered something, and she slowly reached out a trembling hand and took it. And in that moment, in that freezing, damp cellar in the middle of a war zone, she smiled. It was just a tiny smile. But it was like the sun coming up. It wasn't about America. It wasn't about victory or strategy. It was about one person seeing another person's fear and choosing to offer a moment of kindness, a shared piece of chocolate, a moment of warmth in the middle of a world of cold. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's the dream. It doesn't live in Washington or in the halls of the United Nations. It doesn't fly on a flagpole. It lives in moments like that. It's the choice to be decent when it would be easier to be cruel. The choice to be brave when you're terrified. The choice to share your last piece of chocolate with a stranger. That's what I'm fighting for. That's the promise the symbol is supposed to make. The shield. It's not about protecting a country. It's about protecting the space where that choice is still possible, where a person can still choose kindness, where a kid from Brooklyn can still stand up to a bully, whether that bully is in an alleyway or a flying fortress. The world didn't change the mission. It just made the battlefield bigger and the stakes higher. So I pick it up every morning. I feel the cool, familiar metal in my hand. It doesn't feel so heavy anymore. I'm not lost. I was just looking for my north. on a map that had been completely redrawn. I was looking for a country, when I should have been looking for its people, for those small moments of grace. My war isn't over, but it's not the one everyone thinks I'm fighting. I'm not fighting for the past. I'm not fighting against the future. I am fighting for the present. For the idea that right now, in this moment, you can make a choice to help, to protect, to stand up. The world will keep changing, the tides will keep shifting. But that truth, that choice, it's a constant. It's the rock in the water. It's the shore that never washes away. The symbol isn't a promise that we will always win. It's a promise that we will always try. And my name is Steve Rogers. I'm a soldier. And that's a promise I can keep.